Hi everyone, Jake here from IBPF, and thank you for joining today's webinar, The Importance of Diet in Bipolar Disorder. And today we're honored to be joined by Dr. Sheri Johnson and Robert Villanueva. Dr. Johnson is a distinguished professor of psychology and a Chancellor's professor at the University of California Berkeley, where she runs the Cal Mania program. She is co-author, co-editor of 6 books, including Bipolar Disorder for the Newly Diagnosed, and 275 other manuscripts. And Robert Villanueva is an international mental health advocate, speaker, and mentor in the arena of lived experience bipolar disorder. His advocacy journey began over 25 years ago when he received a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, prompting him to confront the stigma surrounding mental illness. And Robert collaborates with researchers, academics, and policymakers both in the United States and globally. And as always, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the talk. You may type in your questions through the Q&A section on the bottom of your display at any time throughout the presentation. And with all that being said, Sheri and Robert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. We're excited for the dialogue.
Of course, so let's dive right into it. So first, let's talk about how much does a person's diet affect the nature of their bipolar disorder?
It's a great question. And I want to start out by saying I really, really wish we knew more. I think that's the science we're jumping into figuring out. But we're jumping into it because I think we share a dream, which is this vision that what if something you could do for free, that we could make it easy to follow, and that didn't have side effects, could be added onto medication and could help reduce symptoms and improve stability and quality of life for people with bipolar disorder. That's the game we're in the business of testing here, is how much can diet do? Now, there's some reasons to think it would matter. First thing is that diet is good for everybody's health. It's good generally for physical health, but there's more and more evidence that it's good overall for mental health. And people really haven't tested it enough in bipolar disorder. But we know that in bipolar disorder, your overall physical health, being healthier physically, is hugely helpful for the outcome of bipolar disorder. People who are in better physical health tend to have less symptoms. They tend to have less kind of some of the brain and cognitive kind of things that sometimes can come for folks with bipolar disorder. And researchers are just beginning to see that that may be even more challenging for some people with bipolar disorder. So rates of metabolic problems in the general population are pretty darn high overall. Like lots of people are wishing they could get rid of belly fat, lower their blood pressure, have better glucose levels, better triglyceride levels, better cholesterol. We all go to the doctor and get those kind of reports and hear like, oh, tune that. But those kinds of health concerns are actually even more prevalent for people with bipolar disorder. They're even more related to outcomes in bipolar disorder. And what we know in the general population is that one of the ways to kind of improve those numbers when you go to the doctor visit is diet. A healthy diet is really great for those kinds of things like blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose levels. So can we get in there and kind of promote better physical health and see better outcomes? That's the dream. That's the hope. That all sounds great, right? But I bet you everybody listening to this has been to the doctor or read some social media or heard on the news, oh yeah, make your diet great, right? I hear it every single day. I'm hearing like, oh yeah, be healthy. And it's a lot harder to do it than just to listen to it. And so, with Robert here, with my team, what we've really been working on is how do we make this feasible for somebody living with bipolar disorder? They already have enough demands in their life. So how do we help people set smart goals that are sort of do one step at a time, one small step a week to make your diet healthier? How do we help give guidance about what diets to try on? And then know that people are going to hit a wall. I hit walls in every one of my health goals. So how do we get coaches in there? Robert is one of our coaches. Other people on the team are there for kind of coaching sessions to say, okay, let's talk about the thing you just bumped into. How do we hack it? How do we get you through that? And then we've developed kind of a lot of tips and resources, little videos, little handouts of like, what do you do on the week when you have no motivation? What do you do if you're trying to eat right, but your kids hate all healthy food? Like all those kinds of things that come up in the real world. How do we help people get through those? So that's a little bit of what we're thinking about.
Yeah. And once again, thank you for having us, Jake, and everybody at International Bipolar Foundation. Yeah, something that when Sheri came to me with this project, I was really excited because on the front end, she asked if we could have a lived experience panel with, people with bipolar disorder and other experiences with other mental health issues, which was exciting because we're on the front end of research and all the programs. And I think with our team that we've really made it comforting in a way, as opposed to some research, which, can be a little difficult at times. So we really thought it out, and I appreciate the team and Sheri and everybody else really, putting the time and listening and giving us a voice, which I think is so important.
I gotta give Robert credit here. Like he's been part of this for well over a year, and he brought forward a lot of this stuff. Like, you can talk about healthy eating, but what if I'm depressed and I don't want to get up and stand at the stove and cook up some quinoa? That's not going to happen, And so he's like, look, here's things I do to make sure I have a piece of fruit that I can eat or something that's easy. Like at every step of the game, he's been really good about helping ground us and think about, okay, what are we doing and how do we make it real?
Yeah, and that's a great point because, I found windows of time. My niece one time, two nieces, I was taking my medication. And one niece looks at the other and says, why is Robert taking his medication? And she says, because his clock doesn't work. And I thought that was brilliant. So for me, I'm able to eat by the clock. So sometimes, as Sheri mentioned, if I'm going through a depression, I can't decide what to eat. I don't want to do dishes later. But I know it's 9 o'clock and I need a little piece of fruit or I need a little something. And on the other end, if I'm hypomanic, I'm ready to go and kill the day. But I got to stop for a moment and say, okay, it's 9 o'clock. I need to eat, even though I have tons of energy. But so it really creates consistency for me.
That's good. That consistency is key.
Yeah.
So now that we know, well, of course, we already know we need to eat healthy. And like you said, Cher, we've been being told that day in and day out. But let's go into the details a little bit more about what specific dietary interventions could be tested for bipolar disorder. And I figure we could start with the Mediterranean diet.
Sure. So that's a really natural diet to test. And one reason for that is it's better tested than probably any other diet out there in the general population. So let's talk with what it is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we know about it. The idea of the Mediterranean diet comes from studying kind of the 7 countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea and what they typically eat, because that looks like it had a health advantage in kind of big cross-national studies. But it's pretty straightforward. You get your vegetables and your fruits. You have a balanced mix of lean proteins from things like poultry or fish, or if you're vegetarian, legumes, beans. Healthier fats like olive oil and the fats that are found in avocados and nuts and seeds. And so what that really means is you're going to eat a lot of vegetables and fruits and grains, and get your olive oil for your fat. And then in turn, it's not that it's forbidden to eat meat or to drink alcohol. You just try and kind of make those an extra that aren't a big part of the day-to-day diet. Try and limit your sugar, try and limit your kind of fast food, processed foods. So it's very vitamin rich, it's very heart healthy, and it's been shown to really influence a lot of the diseases that come out of metabolic health. So healthier hearts, less heart attacks, less cardiovascular events, lower risk of diabetes, and in the general population, better brain health and cognition as people age. So protective against things like dementia. So the scientific evidence is there for thousands and thousands of people, many studies, that it's great for you. But weirdly, we really don't have the data on it in bipolar disorder. And it seems like a natural one for us to test.
So how should and could this intervention be done?
Yeah, so what we want to do is test this. We've got funding from Wellcome Trust to do the largest study comparing this and another healthy diet. And what our game plan is to start with a baseline kind of, let's see what you eat day to day before we get in there and tinker. And then we give people kind of packet, we give sample recipes, we give shopping lists, we give advice about things like people think like, oh, it's going to be expensive. You can eat frozen vegetables, you can eat canned beans, and it doesn't have to be all elaborate. You don't have to draw recipes off of Gourmet Magazine. You can kind of have simple foods, easy to prep. So we give people tips about how do you do this on a budget? How do you do it easily? And you don't have to love Italian food. If your favorite is Indian food, well, fine, use Indian spices on top of those vegetables. If your favorite is Mexican food, use Mexican spices. So we have like, how do you tailor it for the foods you love to eat? But I think the other thing is we help people think about, let's make one change a week. It's not that you're going to flip everything you're doing every week, but let's take it on slow and let's find a feasible goal for what's the one thing you could do with your diet this week to make it a little bit more like the Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know I found that I had to, learn the Mediterranean diet. So early on, I was eating the same thing quite a bit. So as coaches, it's like, okay, let's get some different ideas, small changes, add a little something, so it's really encouraging to learn little tips, from someone that's trying it.
Yeah, I love the just change one thing at a time method. I really think that's helpful, just to avoid just the overwhelming of feeling like you have to do it perfectly. But yeah, so next I'd like to go into time restricted eating and intermittent fasting.
Absolutely. So this is this idea that when you eat may be as powerful as what you eat. It comes out of animal studies that were being done at Salk, where they began to realize that when they fed their mice was as critical for how well the mice were sleeping and how active they, kind of that sleep-wake cycle, as like when the mice were getting light or other things that we traditionally think about as being really powerful sleep-wake guides for your body. They started to study this in humans. They saw the same thing. And in both the mice and the humans, they could see huge benefits for metabolic health, because if you can sleep deeply and get those hormones kind of really well regulated, that's great for your overall health and well-being. They're applying it with lots of different medical conditions, showing great effects. They got a big splashy hit in the media because they started to show that some of those mice were living longer. We don't know that with humans at all, but everybody got really, really excited about it. And it's beautifully simple. You don't have to change around a whole lot about what you eat. We don't say like, oh, great, go eat ice cream, all day long. But, it's really put the focus on wait a little bit in the morning to eat. And most importantly, stop eating a couple hours before you go to sleep. And the reason for that is when you're digesting your food, it's a very energetic process. There's a lot of hormones and body functions involved, and it can disrupt your sleep. So we want that done before people are trying to get themselves to sleep. And we also want food and eating to be very, very regular. Same time every morning, cut your eating out at the end of the day. Now, you may be saying, isn't that what everybody is doing? You eat breakfast at the same time, you have dinner every time. That's the image that we all hold. But it turned out when they surveyed Americans, they figured out that the vast number of Americans were eating 14 hours a day. In other words, if you were awake, you were putting food in your mouth. And you were never giving your body the chance to kind of quiet down, power down, and rest from that kind of digestive process to get ready to go to sleep. So great benefits for people in the general population, never really tested in bipolar disorder, but it was taking off in the media. And we did this quick online survey. We reached out, posted like, hey, will you tell us your experience of this? Within days, we got more than 200 people who said, I have bipolar disorder and I've tried it. And we asked, like, did it help you? 99% of people in that survey said, yeah, it helped me. And 50-60% of people said, yeah, it helped me with my mood and sleep. And those are people who had no coaches. They had no guidance about, hey, what time should I stop eating? How regular do I need to be? How do I do this if I have kids or if my husband likes eating later? We think we can make it easier for people, make it more regular for them to implement, and we hope we see even better results when we give them more coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jake, you mentioned consistency,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is a consistency I could take wherever I'm at. Sometimes I travel, I mean, as long as I'm not going across major time zones, but, usually I eat at 9 o'clock, but if, I'm an hour ahead, I'll eat at 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
so do that for 3 days, just kind of adjust that. I know with me, it took years to kind of dial different medications in, different therapies in. And something I found, it was interesting when Sheri called me, I'd already been doing it probably about a year, just kind of on my own, just exploring, is having that last meal around 6:30. Because at night, it's kind of hard, usually for me, it's always hard to go to sleep, especially consistently. But, 10 o'clock is my focus. So knowing I was going to eat at 6:30 for me, just created kind of like the beginning of wind down and preparation to sleep. And actually I lost a little weight on it too, just because of that consistency. Once again in the morning, sometimes I get up all different times, as a lot of us with bipolar disorder experience. And I'll have some herbal tea in the morning before, I hit my window of 9 o'clock. And it's easier than I thought after a little period of time, at least for me. So that's where we have the coaches, to just help you give little tips and encourage you to just do the best you can. And I love that part of our manual where it says, just do the best you can at that given moment. So.
Yeah, so some might call this 10-14 intermittent fasting plan. So Sheri, do you recommend other forms of intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so there's so much media attention out there on intermittent fasting, and we had to kind of think a little bit about this because a lot of people promoting different versions. Some people are sort of saying, oh, isn't it better if you even just eat 6 or 8 hours a day, right? We shy away from that. And the reason for that is that we think people are more likely to really have intense hunger and kind of hit that hypoglycemic curve when they've gone longer. And then that can trigger kind of that intense hunger that could make people feel a little bingy. So we didn't want that. There's also people who sort of say, well, what if you don't eat 1 day a week? Or what if you don't eat 2 days a week? And again, you could have some hypoglycemia. But the other thing is that what the science behind this tells us is it's about same time every day. And if you're following that, then you don't want to skip food for a day because you just skipped giving your body this beautiful kind of little clock sign of like, it's morning, it's evening, it's time to start powering down. So we really like do the same thing every day. 10 hours feels manageable. It's not going to trigger that kind of intense waves of hunger. And even what we say to people is, look, if you've really been eating 14 hours a day, let's start gradual. Start at 12 hours. Follow that. Your body will get a little bit more efficient in how it adjusts to the kind of power down. You're not eating 12 hours. And then we'll shift to 10 hours so that we don't kind of stress your body in that transition. So we're hoping that this will feel very gentle for people, more feasible. And we're also sort of saying like, look, you know what, if Saturday nights you can't follow this, that's okay. You just did wonderful things for your body 6 out of 7 nights. Give yourself a break. You know, it's not about perfection. It's about feasibility. Get some rituals in place that help and that you can follow over time.
Yeah. And I know that, I take medication every day, at least twice a day. So I've already got that pattern kind of set in. So this is, okay, let's add to that pattern. So that made the transition not easier, but more consistent. And once again, consistency is so big for me.
Yeah, consistency is key. But yeah, let's move forward. Let's talk a little about the ketogenic or keto diet.
Yeah, keto's also getting a lot of attention on social media. And it's fascinating. So the keto diet is this idea of eating a high fat diet with enough protein, low carbohydrates. And it got started with, they found that it was helpful for kids who had very hard to control epilepsy. And the basic idea there is that what seems to be happening when you follow keto is that you start to burn more fats instead of carbohydrates. And in doing that, you change a lot of metabolic indices. So it has this really interesting effect on things like dopamine and serotonin and GABA, the same neurotransmitters that are really tied to mood. And it can influence mitochondrial function, which is a big deal in terms of energy metabolism, having more energy when you need it. And so there's a lot of reasons people think like, wow, we should test this. The problem is we really haven't done much to test it. What we have out there is in bipolar disorder, we have some case studies. And we have reports where, just like we did with TRE, people have said like, hey, have you tried this? Did it work for you? And people are like, yeah, it was helpful for me, but you don't know, is that a bias sample? Is that how it's going to work in the whole population? And then Stanford recently did a really small, like a pilot study with 23 people who they assigned to follow this. The findings looked good. So now the next stage is going to be to say, is that better than just a placebo condition or anything where you say to people, what we want you to do is invest in some behavior change every day that would be good for your health. Maybe just practicing anything that's good for your health every day has benefits, and we need to kind of decipher how much is diet, how much is that intentional. I'm doing something to nurture myself and take care of myself every day. So we're really early on in the science, but I think it's a great thing that people are going to test it.
So what is the current evidence for whether the carnivore diet helps with bipolar disorder?
No idea. Carnivore, so you're eating a lot of meat, is a very specific form of keto, because remember, keto is about, fat and getting enough protein. I can't find a single study. Maybe it's out there and I'm missing it, but I keep scouring the internet going, okay, what do we, and going into the kind of PubMed sort of stuff. I'm not seeing the evidence yet, so.
So how about current evidence for whether the vegan diet helps with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, so vegan is actually in some ways closer to the Mediterranean diet, right? Because you're getting a lot of fruits and vegetables. You're usually eating a lean kind of diet. But we don't know. I can tell you that there's been a lot of surveys of asking people, hey, are you vegan and what's your level of depression? That's different than taking people from the get-go and saying, we're going to randomly assign you to the vegan diet or not. And in the survey data, some people look more depressed, some people look less depressed. So we really don't know. It may be kind of an extreme thing to ask people to follow. The one thing I would say that becomes really important if you are vegan and you have bipolar disorder is to watch your B vitamins. There's ways to get B vitamins into your diet if you're a vegan or even a vegetarian. But you need to look at that really systematically. And the reason for that is B vitamins are a big deal for your energy. And so if you're a little prone to depression, the last thing you want to do is do anything that would sap your energy. So if you're vegan, if you're vegetarian, be really thoughtful about reading up about how do you make sure you get enough of your B vitamins.
Mhm. And so do these diets work for everyone who has bipolar disorder?
Well, you know, that's part of what we want to test. We're going to gather a lot of information about the people who are taking part in our diet studies to say, like, who does it work for? Who sees benefits? Who doesn't see benefits, right? Or who doesn't find it easy to follow? The one thing I would say, we've worked with a lot of, like, we have a safety committee of clinical psychologists and psychiatrists who work with us and sort of think like, okay, where could it go wrong? And the one thing we're being really careful about is not to bring in folks who are already struggling with eating disorder symptoms, um, tendencies to binge. Like, I think if that's a struggle for you, then kind of getting overly focused on kind of dietary perfection is probably a bad idea. The other thing is, I think it's worth just pausing before you start this kind of idea and thinking, am I somebody who just gets bound up in being really hypercritical and perfectionistic about, you know, day-to-day health stuff? Because our hope is that people who take these on can take it on with a kind of attitude of like, look at this beautiful thing I'm giving my body every day. Here's this small way to remind myself that I'm going to nurture myself. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to take this moment to do that. But if it becomes, look, this is another thing I'm failing at, or this is too hard, or I didn't get X number of vegetables into my diet and I'm going to punish myself for it this week, that's really sad. Like, that is not what we want people's experience to be. So we'll help people, you know, we'll coach them, we'll try and help them kind of quell that cycle. But I think, look, we're all living with enough norms and standards and ideas that we should be up here. And so I think before anyone starts a health change program, just getting your head centered around, like, I'm doing this as a gift to myself, not as a way to punish myself.
Mm-hmm. That's so good, so relevant to remember. But
So hard. It's just so
Yeah.
hard.
You know, and basically family members or partners or roommates, you know, they're part of this also. And I think they encourage it. You know, for example, my wife, she, you know, has she doesn't get off at a set time. And it used to be a little frustrating for me. And she would come home at 8 and I'd have dinner ready. And so just through talking and basically, you know, other coaches talking to me, it's I have my dinner at 6:30, and if she comes home, pops it in the microwave, I'm fine with that because she's supporting me, and you know, and I know that, and I appreciate that. So, and now she eats in the morning before she goes to work, where she used to not. You know, she grab a coffee and go, but she, yeah, now she has a little still cut oatmeal in the morning, and she's off to work.
And I think, I mean, that couple stuff is really important. So, for example, you know, if Robert's wife is eating later, it's fine for him to sit down at the table, have a glass of water, and just make that a conversation period. But we've got to help people think about food is really a social bond. So, how do you protect your social bonds while you're doing something that changes around food? Similarly, you have kids or you have a partner, and they may not want the Mediterranean diet. I eat way more vegetables and lentils than my partner could tolerate. For him, lentils is like, seventh circle of hell. So I have to get used to the idea that, okay, I'm going to give him a piece of chicken breast and I'm going to have my lentils, and then peace reigns. So there are hacks for these things, but we have to take them seriously.
Yeah, that's too good. Robert, could you tell us more about your personal experience with these diets?
Yeah, I was actually a wrestler in high school. So I was always aware of food and nutrition. And then afterwards became a wrestling coach. I was a wrestling coach for 15 years. And so always thought about food, not in particular way what time to eat, but just eat healthy. I would say I always ate fairly healthy. But actually during my struggles with bipolar disorder, before I got stability, my nutrition was horrible, and I just grab what I can. And at times I had money, and do I buy meds or food or, so it was a struggle for a long time. So nutrition's been very important part. And Sheri knew that, coming into it when we talked about this project. And so I think that helps me with nutrition and kind of having a good sense of it. But I really think between the time restricted eating and Mediterranean diet, it's like I can focus kind of like on it's not just a sport for me, it's like wrestling. So it's not just nutrition for me. It's actually, okay, Mediterranean or TRE. I don't have to make a lot of decisions. And I know I can get better on those things. If I put some time into it, I can get better. So, I can focus on those. So it really gives me good focus as far as nutrition and, times and self-care. It ultimately comes down to self-care and wanting stability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing. And now I want to talk about, share your research team, the COM program at UC Berkeley, and the new international study that you just launched comparing the benefits of the Mediterranean diet and the time-restricted eating diet for bipolar disorder. So I would just love if you could tell us more about the study and how someone can go about participating in this research.
Sure. This is going to be the largest study of diet and bipolar disorder to date. We're reaching out around the world to find 450 people with bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder who will join us in testing this out, doing assessments to see, honestly, how does it work for them? What are they bumping into? How much are they able to follow it? And people can learn more about it by going to our website, the CALM program at Berkeley. And I'm sure we can share that link with folks, but who are we looking for? We're looking for folks who already have a medical provider for their bipolar disorder, because we want to see, does this help above and beyond that? We're looking for folks who aren't in the middle of dieting and losing a lot of weight, because that's its own thing. And here we're just looking at health, not weight loss. Folks who are not struggling with eating disorders. And because we're really interested in how these things influence sleep and kind of day-night rhythms, we're interested particularly in finding folks who maybe their schedule and day-to-day life is not that regular. Sometimes they get up later, sometimes they leave for work later, or who have kind of troubles falling asleep or sleep rhythms that aren't very stable. Like sometimes they're asleep at 8, sometimes they're asleep at 10, so that we can look at whether it makes a difference on that. And then, if people are interested, they can reach out to us. We have an email on our website. They can write and ask questions. We also do an online screening that people can walk through and see, like, does this look like a good study for me? If not, we're doing other studies that are not about intervention. We pay people $25 an hour for assessment time after they get into one of our studies. And we just welcome questions. We welcome interest. We're trying hard to spread the word because we really want to kind of bring as many people into testing this out with us as we can, and seeing how it works. So I guess I should give you the link, which is CALM, CALM, Berkeley, which is also very hard to spell, BERKELEY.edu. And you'll find stuff about us. Yeah, there you go. That's how you spell it. Nobody can spell it. It's a weird word.
And then also to make it a little easier as well, I've just put the link into the chat for everyone.
Great.
And I'll also attach that email that questions can be sent to. So for everyone in attendance, that is in the chat box. You can visit the link to learn more about the study, how you could get involved, and the email to ask any questions. And while we're on the topic of questions, we will be going into the question and answer portion of today's talk. So I'm so excited. Please drop your questions into the question box and let's get started. So one person says, taking Seroquel before bedtime increases their appetite, which makes it difficult for intermittent fasting. So I suppose the question is there any way that they could go about this?
It's a great question. And one thing to do is, check in with your medical provider about ways to kind of help with Seroquel and its timing. But one of the things that we're really learning and looking at how this works is it's really important not to starve yourself. And there's a couple things that go into that. One is if you're used to eating late at night, you probably got a fair number of your calories from those late night snacks. They actually tend to be the big calorie rich hits, like, ooh, a bowl of chocolate ice cream, right? Like that's a lot of calories. So you got to make sure you're getting enough calories earlier in the day before you get rid of that late night snack. And then the other thing is some foods kind of stick to the ribs for longer. So you want to make sure that at dinner time, you're having enough protein and that you're having enough of your calories at dinner time to kind of hold you over through this fast period. So we recommend that people really take a look at, okay, if I'm cutting ice cream out of my late night, what am I doing to make sure I'm having enough dinner and enough really healthy proteins at dinner time?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, sorry, Robert, I was just going to say there's good tips for how to get through a craving. Of most of us, most cravings last 10 minutes or less. It's just like, so how do you tolerate it? Well, you can distract yourself. You can try having some water. You can do something where you're moving because sometimes that kind of helps your body kind of get out of that kind of little zone. You can do deep breathing. So what we try and do is coach people of tips of how to get through a craving period. But Robert, I'm so sorry. I want to hear what you have to say about this.
No. Yeah, so I've had experience with antipsychotics for sleep, and having, with my doctor's awareness, definitely working together. Intermittently, not all the time, but there's times where I just cannot sleep. So, I'll maybe take an antipsychotic. What I found works for me is having ice water in the refrigerator, all the snacks in the back of the refrigerator or back of the cupboard, and have, something maybe iced tea without sugar. Well, not iced tea, that wouldn't be bad, but ice water. I guess ice water is my big thing, and I get up and I'm reaching the refrigerator, but it's like, okay, there's ice water. It's a reminder of what I'm trying to do to help myself, and other stuff won't help me get back to sleep. So I think that's one of my tips. Whatever, a non-sugar beverage, I believe, well, no caffeine either. So that's really important.
Yeah. Some people put a sticker on their fridge to kind of remind themselves because it's easy to have that be automatic. I know for me, when I'm trying to avoid kind of those kind of intense late night snack things like the chocolate ice cream for me, I hate to say it, but the only way I can avoid it is to not have it in my freezer. When they start making a padlock for ice creams, I think it's going to sell big time.
I can agree with that. And Robert, I also like the idea of the snacks at the back of the cupboard. I've been had that one before.
Yeah.
We're gonna move forward with the next question. So this one's about requirements from the study and if there's anything that would disqualify someone from participating in the study, for example, cannabis use.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of our criteria are designed to say, let's give this every chance to succeed. And so let's say that you're in the middle of a horrible depression or a period of incredible mania, or you're really struggling with substances. Our advice is let's make that the focus first. Let's help you be in a spot where, you're not in the throes of depression. You're not in the throes of a really big mania. You're not in the middle of dealing with cravings for substance or alcohol. And then come on in. And often we'll work with people and say, otherwise, this study looks great for you, but let's wait. And we'll work with people to make sure they're getting good care for those things, because we just see those as the first steps on the road to health. It's kind of a pyramid, right? Like, let's take care of these things, then we'll build in kind of food plan ideas. So People can take our screener, no cost, no harm, no foul, and see if they, if they look like a good fit for the study. But a lot of it is just like, let's make sure people are first getting the first steps towards good health. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate the team. That safety has been very important, with the population, because at times we're, dealing with a vulnerable population. So it's really put thought into, how we set up this research. And Sheri, thank you for, you know, listening and making those, changes if needed, not necessarily, but I think safety has always been our focus for sure.
And to be clear, somebody who occasionally uses cannabis and isn't struggling with it and isn't having problems because of it, we're not going to worry about it. Will it give them the munchies and make it harder to follow the diet? It might. But you know what? Again, we're not trying to go for perfection. We're just trying to say, okay, get your basic health care in place, and then give this a shot and you do your best.
Yeah, the consideration taken into the study is very admirable. So I thank you for that, Sheri. And yeah, one of our attendees wants to know more about what is the coaching program and if they can do it remotely.
Yeah, so the nice thing about this study is everything can be done remotely. If you are in an English-speaking country where we have consultants who help us through the legal and safety kinds of things, you can come on in. So Canada, UK, Australia, the US, what am I forgetting there? But, and then everything is remote. We send you the food plan remotely. You do the assessments by Zoom or, online. And the coaching, the way it works is you sign up and we give you a calendar and you sign up for a time slot with the person that you would prefer to sign up with. And they're short. They're meant to be kind of shot in the arm. They're not therapy around how do I cope with my depression. They're really, here's what I'm hitting with trying to implement this food plan. I don't know what to do about my late night cravings. And you chat with somebody, a Robert or somebody else on the team, and 15 minutes are really focus in on here's what we suggest for cravings. Come back every week if you want to, but short, shot in the arm stuff. And then a lot of times, our coaches might say, hey, you know what? We have a tip sheet for that, or we have a video for that. I'm going to send you that little bit of extra kind of idea on that. And people have access to that kind of material every week too. We do a survey of like, hey, what's the biggest struggle for you? Because we know people are going to hit the wall, they're going to hit barriers, and then we can direct them towards kind of tip sheets and videos to help them with that barrier.
Makes sense. So the next question is, are the food groups in the study randomized, or can participants choose the diet intervention they prefer?
I wish. Yeah, this is a funny thing about the way clinical trials work. We have to randomly assign people. Otherwise, we won't really know if it's the food plan, if the food plan really works as well as we think it will, because otherwise there's all kinds of things that go into people's preferences. So we assign it. And we're not saying to people, you're wed to following it for the next year. We ask people to try it for 8 weeks. And if it doesn't work for them, that's okay. We're going to monitor like, okay, how well did it work for you? How much were you able to follow it? And then we'll see, like, did following it more help people more? So yeah, but we have to say, all right, you're assigned to TRE or you're assigned to med diet. So.
Yeah, so our next question is, this one's transitioning over to the topic of sleep a little bit. So I'm sure Sheri and Robert, you both could have some suggestions for this. So our audience member has found that they've been getting very little deep sleep, between 0 to 5 minutes a night. And, they haven't found anything that has helped them increase this. So is there any tips to increasing their deep sleep?
There certainly are. So getting light exposure at dawn and dusk, having the same time that you go to sleep each night, removing kind of things that interfere. Melatonin promotes deep sleep. It's a hormone that's what it does. It's your deep sleep friend. You want to avoid things that could interfere with melatonin, particularly in the evening and as you're in those couple hours before you're trying to go to sleep. And so that means winding down from watching TV, being on your cell phone. If you do need to do that, there's actually blue light glasses that block the blue light that interferes directly with melatonin. So blue light glasses are really helpful. And then sleep is complicated, and there's whole programs dedicated to helping people get better sleep. So for example, there's a version of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, really showing great results. Allison Harvey here at Berkeley has done beautiful work where she's just targeted insomnia for people with bipolar disorder and shown really nice benefits. And so she takes a whole approach to sort of saying, okay, let's look at the 5 to 10 things that are most important to good sleep. Let's figure out which of those that you might be going through, and then let's give you skills for each of those. So check out Allison Harvey's work, check out CBTI. There's even online apps that are designed to help people with some of the CBTI. So cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI techniques. If you don't have somebody in your area that's offering those, and there's self-help workbooks. And interestingly, the psychotherapy, those kind of behavioral strategies often work better and more long-term than something like an Ambien. Ambien will help people kind of get to sleep initially, but it wears off pretty quickly and it has some of the side effects. So really worth looking into the behavioral programs. And there's a lot of really solid tips that are very well tested. And then, of course, we'd like to think that if you avoid late night eating, that'll help. But we're testing that in bipolar disorder. Other people are testing it really carefully in the general population, though, and are really excited about that idea.
Yeah. And I would say consistency, I think, Sheri hit a lot there. So that's great stuff that I'm learning. I'm like, oh, okay. I know Allison Harvey, but I didn't know about CBTI. Yeah, consistency, I don't know how that'll help deep sleep, but I know it's sleep hygiene as far as that goes. I don't have a TV in my room where I used to turn off the TV, try to get to bed, so same time.
Mm. Exercise is also your friend in kind of promoting a little bit deeper sleep. So, but start gradual. Don't set goals that are way up here.
Yeah, so we're transitioning, shifting back a little more to the diet aspect. And in regards to the study, I'm like, what carb level of keto are you looking at?
Yeah, we're actually not testing keto. I would say people who are interested in being part of keto work should reach out. There's a group at Stanford doing a trial on the keto diet. And so I would search Stanford keto bipolar diet, and I think they'll find that that would be the best way to go there.
Excellent. And let's put one of these questions in the question box. Not a question, but we want to say thank you very much to you, Sheri, and to you, Robert. And they want to let you know it's a wonderful discussion. And thought I would share that. And then, so moving forward to the next question is, aside from what was aforementioned, are there certain foods in particular that there's been evidence to be consumed on a daily basis to help manage bipolar type 1?
It's a great question. I'm fascinated by all this kind of food stuff. And every day there's something in social media of like, eat more avocados, eat more oatmeal. This weekend, one of my friends was like, oh, are you eating psyllium husk? I was like, psyllium husk, and I'm on that, right? But usually, like, I come home and I search the psyllium husk idea, and it's fiber, right? And there's lots of different ways to get fiber. There's lots of different ways to get lean protein. There's lots of beautiful fruits and vegetables. I tend to kind of buy into this idea of like, look at your overall balance of fruits and vegetables. Look at your overall ability to get, lean proteins and give yourself wiggle room. My poor friend was like, psyllium husk, it's making me feel terrible. I don't like the way it tastes and it's making me bloated. But she had read that it was good. But it turns out it's a fiber, So I think keeping it a little simpler and allowing yourself some flexibility is maybe our better friend long run.
Yeah, so that's an excellent answer, Shay, by the way. So thank you for that, as always. And the next question is, one of our audience members has been reading about the role of the gut microbiota on anxiety and depression. And they want to know what could be a good place to start improving the care of their gut specifically.
That's a great question, and it is a fascinating area of science. And it's a really hard area of science because people think that there's, more than 100 indices of what a healthy gut is, and they get in there and look at it. And one thing we know is that changing your gut microbiome is a slow process, so be patient. My understanding is that limiting sugar might be one place to really start. Some people really like fermented foods, so things like yogurt or vinegar or uh, foods that are fermented might be healthy for your microbiome. I am not an expert in that. I'm only chanting to you kind of what I'm reading out there. My understanding is that the Mediterranean diet is very, very healthy for your gut over time. And there's reasons to think that it would be good for your body to follow the time restricted eating because you're allowing a window for your kind of gut to recover from kind of food being put into the system. But I don't think we know that about time restricted eating. So yeah, it's early in that science. The animal studies are fascinating though, because they can do experimental manipulations. And I'm really excited to see what happens with that field of work over time.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
so
that
go
I
ahead.
think
Go ahead.
something good about participating also is that we learn so much. I've learned so much that, circadian rhythms, liver has circadian rhythm, kidney has circadian rhythms. And, so I guess not only being part of the study, but also learning so much, is pretty cool too.
Mhm. Yeah,
The
so
biome stuff is really fascinating. My brother now has me enrolled for a miso making class because he's convinced that fermented foods are so good for you that and I'm like, I take this class and what happens? He's like, you go home with a gallon of miso. I'm like, and then what? And then he sent me a cookbook last week on what do I do with a gallon of miso. So we'll see.
I hope that miso class continues to go well. That's pretty neat. But yeah, so the next question is just a quick question regarding the study. Is there a deadline to submit the questionnaire for if they're
No, no. In fact, the early questionnaire is like 45 minutes long. So we tell people like wait till you have a chance, and there's even a spot to put in, would you like a reminder to come back to this? And we're going to be doing this for the next several years. So if this is not the right month, put it in your calendar to think about us, when you get through the holidays or whatever, we're here. And we even have ways that we'll reach back out to people who sort of say, I want to do this, but now's not the time for me. Do you have a way to remind me? And I could start this. When we enroll people, we sort of say, let's think about what's coming up in your life. And if you want to wait 2 months to start your game plan, that's fine with us. Like we're in for the long game.
Mhm. That's great. And so we have a time for about two more questions. So if you have anything, submit it and we'll try to get to it. But my next question is, how long will people be participating in the study if after the first initial 8 weeks they find that it goes very well? How long can they expect to continue the diet?
Oh, so we'll follow people through that next year to ask them some questions about how they're doing. And it's up to them. And that's one of the things we'll ask is across those next months, are you still following this? And what parts of it are you still kind of holding on to in your lifestyle? We're interested in it. And it's really up to people after those 8 weeks. Do I want to keep doing it or not? Interestingly, in the other studies of time-restricted eating, when they've gone back in and said after a year, when people just had their choice, people are like, yeah, I'm still doing it. It kind of works for me. So there's a kind of, it's harder to get started, but then once you get started, it's kind of an easy thing to roll with. And I think Mediterranean diet is similar. Like once you get used to having a few more of those recipes and hacks in your daily life, it rolls.
Good. So our final question is, if someone doesn't qualify to participate in the study, are there any ways they can connect with coaching with professionals like you, Robert, who have their own lived experience?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know how we do that. We're kind of running on a shoestring. And so we've got to dedicate our resources to kind of figuring out what we do in the study. I wish we had the ability to just give more. We are willing to share our manuals on kind of, for people who've been through screening and we have to say, yeah, this isn't right. We're willing to share, like, here's what our food plan looks like for people, the kind of initial couple pages of coaching ideas, but we can't staff up coaching more generally. Maybe someday in the future we'll be a center and can do that. First, we got to see how we do.
Yeah. And that, fidelity to the research also. So we want to make sure that, we keep fidelity on that. My first impulse is I want to talk to everybody, so peer support groups are great, so that's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who will support you in the community, and I wish we could take care of everybody. So I wish we could clone Robert, but we haven't figured that one out yet either. So a lot of work to be done.
Well, I love that you're making the guide available to people who apply for the screening. So that's great. And that just provides further motivation for, if you're trying to learn more about diet and bipolar disorder and the benefits of the time-restricted eating versus the Mediterranean diet. And it's a great place to start. And I like to say again, I put the link into the chat for Cal Berkeley to learn more about healthy lifestyles for bipolar disorder, and as well as the email that's there to email any questions. And I just want to thank you both so much, Sheri, Robert, just for contributing your knowledge. I know how busy you are planning this study, the world's largest study on diet and bipolar disorder, diet intervention. So IBPF is so grateful to have you on, have you share with our audience. And I want to ask you if you have any closing comments.
I just want to offer a huge thanks to you, Jake, personally, for all you do and for giving us this chance to talk, but also for the foundation. I think it's a really critical role you play, and appreciate all you do to help.
Yeah. I'd like to say thank you also, thanks for having us. Great job. And this is actually, for me, the funnest part of being on the research team is getting out there and talking to people and show how excited I am and, from other people I talk to. So thank you and the International Bipolar Foundation for having us.
Of course. Again, Sheri, Robert, thank you again. A big thank you to all in attendance. I want to let you know that this recording will be made available on ibpf.org under our educational videos tab on our website. If you have any feedback on the webinar itself, please email info@ibpf.org. We love to hear what you think, what you like, how we can improve. And with all that being said, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.